For 5 relentless years, I poured everything I had into building Apex Forge. 60-hour weeks were considered light. I gave up vacations, skipped birthdays, even lost a relationship or two, all in pursuit of one dream, to create something that mattered. And when we finally secured $10 million in series of funding, I thought it was the start of the next chapter, not the end of mine. Logan Avery, our CEO, called me into his corner office the same afternoon the funding closed. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. He was still in his custom-tailored suit, sipping some artisanal espresso, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline like he'd conquered it himself. "We're bringing in someone with more experience," he said flatly. Just like that. No warning, no thank you, not even a conversation. He slid a severance envelope across the glass table like it was a dry cleaning receipt. As I stood there, stunned, he added, "Don't worry. Nobody remembers the builders, just the ones who scale." He grinned faintly, already moving on. I stared at him for a second, then calmly signed the paperwork. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, voice steady. I don't know where the professionalism came from. Maybe because I knew something Logan didn't. My name is Daniel Whitaker, or rather, it was Senior Systems Engineer Daniel Whitaker, right up until 3:42 p.m. that Thursday. I walked past the open floor plan of Apex Forge, where younger engineers still typed away on code I had written, code born during the 2 a.m. grind sessions back when the office was a leaky warehouse near the old rail yard in East LA. Back then, we didn't have air conditioning or health insurance, just a fridge full of Red Bull and a shared dream. Heading out early, a junior engineer named Chris called, barely looking up from his monitor. "Something like that," I said with a polite smile that didn't touch my eyes. It took me less than 10 minutes to gather everything I owned from my desk. A dying potted plant, a framed photo of my nephew, and a coffee mug that said, "Trust the process." 5 years, and all of it fit inside a canvas tote bag. As the elevator doors slid shut behind me, a strange calm took over. Logan was wrong. People may forget faces and names, but systems remember their creators. The architecture of Apex Forge's platform was written in my language. My documentation style, my shorthand notes, deliberately obscure, designed to jog my memory, not to guide replacements. I had always meant to clean it up for others, someday, but someday never came, and I was okay with that. 3 weeks before my termination, I had sensed a shift. Closed-door meetings. Logan looping in a new guy, Troy, a so-called engineering consultant, with a glossy resume and zero context. I'd seen the writing on the wall, so I'd done what any seasoned builder with scars would do. I started protecting what was mine. Every version log, original sketch, prototype, and IP-related document I had written, I quietly compiled and forwarded them to my personal attorney, Valerie North. Not out of paranoia, but out of a lesson I learned the hard way. You see, my father was also an engineer. In the 90s, he developed a lithium-based battery system that revolutionized backup power grids. When his company went public, they pushed him out and erased his name from every press release. I was 14 when I watched him fight back tears at a trade show where his design was paraded as someone else's innovation. I swore it would never happen to me. So when I got in my truck and drove home that afternoon, I wasn't bitter. I was prepared. And when I called Valerie from the driveway and said simply, "It happened," she didn't miss a beat. "We're ready," she said. "Come in tomorrow." The next morning, I didn't wake up to an alarm for the first time in years. No Slack notifications. No Jira tickets screaming for my attention. Just sunlight filtering through the blinds and the distant hum of a city that had always moved too fast. I made coffee like it was a ritual, not a fuel stop. I actually cooked breakfast, and then I drove to Valerie's office in Westwood with a strange sense of calm, like I was finally moving with purpose again, not just momentum. Her conference table looked like a forensic lab. Diagrams, flowcharts, commit logs, time-stamped emails, all neatly organized, all pointing to one thing. I had built the beating heart of Apex Forge. Not Troy, not Logan, me. Valerie gave me a tight smile as I sat down. "You've documented everything." "I learned from my father," I replied. "He always said, keep your receipts. One day, you'll need them more than your resume." She nodded. "So, What do you want to do, Daniel? It was a good question. I wasn't the kind of guy who burned bridges just to feel the heat. But I also wasn't going to stand by while someone else cashed in on my blood, sweat, and server load. Nothing yet, I said, but I want to be ready. Smart, she said. They'll come calling. They always do once they realize what they've lost. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at a cafe in Santa Monica, nursing an overpriced oat milk latte and pretending to look at job listings. The ocean was a calm sheet of glass behind me, and then my phone rang. Joseph Riley, Apex Forge's CTO. His name flashed on the screen like a ghost from past life. Daniel, he began, overly cheerful. How have you been? I'm well, I said evenly. What can I do for you, Joseph? Well, the team's working on the next platform update, and they've hit a couple of snags with the architecture. Some of the documentation is, let's say, unconventional. I let the silence stretch. We were hoping you might be available for a quick consultation, he continued, trying to sound casual. Consultation, I repeated, slow and deliberate. I'm not sure that would be appropriate given the circumstances of my exit. We're prepared to compensate you. Of course, he added quickly. Logan may have acted a little prematurely. I nearly laughed. Prematurely? That man had gutted the team that built his entire product. I'm afraid I'm quite busy at the moment, I said, echoing his language. But perhaps Troy, with all his experience, can figure it out. Daniel, be reasonable. Good luck, Joseph, I said, and hung up. 10 minutes later, he texted me. We can double your consulting fee. Please reconsider. I didn't reply. Let them stew. That evening, while I was prepping dinner, an email came through from Ethan Tran, one of the junior engineers I'd mentored. Subject line, you won't believe this. Ethan had always been sharp, loyal, one of the few people who actually listened. His message was short, but brutal. Daniel, everything's falling apart. Troy can't make sense of the authentication framework. 3 clients have already complained about data access issues. Logan's blaming the dev team, but everyone knows it's because no one understands your code. Joseph's in full panic mode. I stared at the email. Part of me felt bad. Most of the engineering team were good people, caught in the crossfire of ego and bad leadership. But then I remembered Logan's smug dismissal. Nobody remembers the builders. That line had lived rent-free in my mind for a month. Now it was starting to crack. And then, as if on cue, my phone rang again. Valerie, I just got a call from Apex Forge's legal department, she said. They want to discuss a consulting arrangement. That was fast. Apparently, they're having what they call technical difficulties. I chuckled. Understatement of the year. I say we wait, she replied. Let them get a little more desperate. It strengthens your position. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about revenge. This was about value, recognition, justice. For once, I held the power. By week 4, the calls became daily. Joseph, Troy, even Ethan on the sly, asking for hints. I kept my distance, gave vague answers. Meanwhile, I was busy taking meetings, not with recruiters, but with competing firms. I wanted to understand the market, to know what my work was truly worth beyond Apex Forge's walls. And then it happened. One bright Tuesday morning, exactly a month after I walked out of that glass tower, I got the call. Logan's voice came through the phone tight and clipped, like he was trying to sound confident, but forgot what that actually felt like. Daniel, he began, I think we got off on the wrong foot. That was rich. The board and I have been revisiting your departure, and we believe there may have been a misunderstanding. I leaned back in my chair, watching the waves outside the cafe window. A misunderstanding? About what exactly? About your value to the company, he said, dragging each word out like it physically pained him. We'd like to bring you back on as a consultant to help with the transition. For a moment, I considered playing nice. Then I remembered the smirk on his face the day he fired me. I'm not interested in consulting, I said evenly, but I appreciate the offer. Daniel, be reasonable, he snapped. We're offering 6 figures for just a few weeks of work. I'm quite busy at the moment. And I hung up. Immediately, I called Valerie. He just offered a 6-figure consulting deal. There was a pause, then a low whistle. They're desperate, she said, but we need to tread carefully. Have you been monitoring their product rollout? I had. Their client dashboard was glitchy. Uptime had dropped below 90%. Twitter was a war zone of support complaints. And their stock, which had surged after the funding round, had tanked 15% in the past week alone. It's not looking good, I told her. Perfect, she said calmly. I've been digging on my end. You might want to sit down for this. I did. Turns out Logan's been presenting your authentication system as his own invention to the investors. He's been claiming you were just implementing his vision. The words hit harder than I expected. What? I said, my voice low. One of my contacts on their board confirmed it. They believe Logan was the mastermind, not you. That's what got them to sign off on the $10 million. A sharp heat rose in my chest. It wasn't just that he fired me. It wasn't even that he tried to replace me. He'd stolen the thing I'd spent years building and slapped his name on it like it was a label on a cereal box. What's our next move? I asked, my voice firm. We wait one more week, Valerie said. Let them dig their own grave. Then, we formally assert retained intellectual property rights. Will that hold up? She didn't hesitate. The initial prototype was developed before you joined Apex. You have dated GitHub logs and email chains proving it. You refine it on the company clock, sure, but the IP core is yours. I remembered those early Saturdays coding at my kitchen counter, tweaking the encryption sequence, refining the two-phase handshake protocol. It was mine. Always had been. That leverage had just become power. 5 weeks after my dismissal, Apex Forge was falling apart. Their stock was down another 20%. Whispers of client churn spread through industry forums. And then, silence. The desperate calls stopped. The texts dried up. Until my doorbell rang. Standing on my front porch was Olivia Hayes, the lead investor from Sequoia Hills Capital. She was in a blazer and jeans, no assistant, no entourage. Mr. Whitaker, she said, apologies for the unexpected visit. May I come in? I stepped aside and gestured to the living room. Olivia sat down on the edge of the couch, businesslike but urgent. Let me be direct. Apex Forge is in trouble, and I believe you know why. I said nothing. The authentication system is broken. Clients are defecting. Logan told us he had redundancy plans. That was a lie. And more concerning, we've discovered he misrepresented your role in the company. I raised an eyebrow. He told the board you were a supporting engineer, not the architect. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was finally clear to someone. Well, I said, that's not the story the documentation tells. I'm not here to argue, she replied. I'm here to ask for your help. The board holding an emergency meeting tomorrow. Logan doesn't know I'm meeting you, but we want you there. To tell the truth. To set the record straight. I considered it, only with legal protections. Of course, we'll include your attorney. This isn't about backroom deals. It's about fixing what Logan broke. As soon as she left, I called Valerie. This is sooner than expected, she said. But it's a good sign. You walk in now. You walk in with power. What about the IP notification? Still send it tonight, she advised. Let them wake up to it before the meeting. That way, they know exactly where you stand. And we did. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. The Apex Forge headquarters looked exactly as I remembered: glass, steel, and polished concrete. A monument to ambition. But as I walked through the lobby that morning, flanked by Valerie, I felt none of the nerves I'd expected. Only clarity. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she recognized me. I nodded, offered a polite smile, and kept walking. The elevator ride was silent, save for the soft hum of tension. At the executive floor, people turned to look. Conversations paused. Eyes follow me down the hall like ghosts watching a resurrection. The main conference room was already filled when we arrived. Logan sat at the head of the table, his usual smug expression replaced by something tighter, a mask cracking at the edges. Olivia Hayes sat near the center, flanked by 3 other board members and senior investors. Joseph Riley, the CTO, looked pale like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Mr. Whitaker, Olivia said, standing to greet me. Thank you for coming. And this must be Ms. North. That's correct, Valerie replied smoothly, setting her briefcase on the table. We're here in good faith. However, I should note we've already delivered a formal notification asserting Mr. Whitaker's retained intellectual property rights. Logan's face flushed. This is absurd, he snapped. He signed an employment agreement. All work produced belongs to the company. I'm aware of what I signed, I said calmly. But the authentication framework you're currently using was developed as a personal project, well before my employment began. I brought it in with full transparency, and I have the original GitHub repository and email records to prove it. Victor Blake, a silver-haired investor from Northbridge Equity, leaned forward. Is this true, Logan? Logan stiffened. He's exaggerating. The idea might have existed, but the actual implementation. With your permission, I interrupted, turning to Olivia, I'd like to share some evidence. She nodded. I connected my laptop to the conference screen. First, the GitHub log, with time-stamped commits going back 2 years before I joined Apex. Then, early emails between me and Logan, in which I clearly outlined my intent to incorporate my system into the platform. Next, I pulled up internal investor decks, the very ones that had been used to secure the $10 million. The slides detailed the unique security architecture, but my name was nowhere in them. You'll note, Valerie added, that Mr. Avery never formalized any agreement to transfer IP rights for pre-existing work. Standard employment contracts do not automatically cover inventions created outside the scope of employment and introduced at the employee's discretion. The room fell into silence. Joseph, eyes downcast, finally spoke up. I can confirm it. Daniel built the core framework. No one else understood it well enough to maintain it. Not even me. Logan glared at him, but the damage was done. Victor Blake turned his focus on Logan. You represented yourself as the creator of this system. I supervised it. Supervision is an invention, I said, finally letting some steel into my voice. You set deadlines. I built systems. The room shifted. I could feel it. Authority slipping from Logan like sand through his fingers. What are you asking for, Mr. Whitaker? One board member finally asked. Valerie spoke clearly, measured. My client isn't here to sabotage Apex Forge. He believes in the product, but he demands proper recognition for his work, appropriate compensation for the IP, and public acknowledgement to correct the misrepresentation of his contributions. And if we decline, then the IP claim stands, Valerie said. You will be legally barred from using the authentication framework, rendering your current platform non-functional. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The future of Apex Forge, its valuation, its product, its reputation, all hinged on the one person they had thrown out the door without a second thought. The boardroom meeting dragged on for 3 more hours. Discussions turned to negotiations. Deals were drafted in real time. Logan sat hunched in his chair, diminished. Finally, Olivia stood. After reviewing the documentation and testimony, the board has made several decisions. She turned to Logan. Effective immediately, we're initiating a leadership transition. Your misrepresentation of technical leadership has damaged investor trust and jeopardized our operation. Logan's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. We are, Victor said. The company was built on Daniel's technology, not yours. Olivia turned to me. We're offering you the position of Chief Technology Officer, with full equity compensation and royalties on the authentication system going forward. I blinked. You're serious? We're also requiring a public statement acknowledging your work and correcting the record. Valerie smiled. That satisfies our conditions. Logan stood, fuming. You're making a mistake. You're giving the company away to someone who held a hostage. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not holding a hostage. I'm making sure the truth has a seat at the table. Logan stormed out. The door slammed shut behind him. 3 months later, I stood on a small stage in Apex Forge's newly redesigned common area, facing a crowd of engineers, investors, and a handful of reporters from the tech press. Behind me, a new mission statement was stenciled on the wall, built with integrity, scaled with purpose. It wasn't just a tagline. It was a promise. Today, I began, we're not just releasing a new version of our platform. We're starting something much bigger, a new chapter built on transparency, collaboration, and respect for the people who make innovation possible. Applause followed, but I didn't pause for it. This wasn't about fanfare. This was about putting things right. The authentication system that had once been mine alone Lines of code scribbled over long nights in a one-bedroom apartment was now in the hands of a team. A team I led. A team that got credit for their work. We rewrote the documentation, made it accessible, maintained backups. We made sure no one person would ever be the sole keeper of a product soul again. After the announcement, Olivia Hayes approached me near the coffee bar. "The investors are pleased," she said with a rare, genuine smile. "Support tickets are down 87%. Our stock's rebounding, and several clients who left are coming back." I nodded. "It's a team effort." "True," she replied, "but your leadership turned it around." Then she paused. "Have you heard about Logan?" I shook my head. He walked away, turned down the strategic advisor role. He's trying to launch a new startup, but it's not going well. People talk, Daniel, and reputations follow you. I felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction, exactly, not pity either, something in between. "I hope he learns from it," I said finally. "As do I," Olivia replied, though some lessons come at a higher cost than others. Later that evening, I returned to my office, a modest corner space with no more glass than anyone else's. I didn't need titles or views anymore. I just needed clarity and purpose. As I was reviewing the week's code updates, an email arrived. From Logan Avery. Subject: no subject. "Daniel, I owe you an apology. I should have acknowledged your contributions. I'll let ego get in the way. The company's better off with you leading it. Logan." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't believe him, but because for the first time in this entire journey, he said something honest. I thought about deleting it. Instead, I replied, "Logan, thank you for the message. I wish you success in your future endeavors. Daniel." And that was enough. This story wasn't about revenge. It was about identity, about refusing to be written out of your own legacy, about standing up not to burn bridges, but to build a better one for those coming behind you. Because in this world, recognition isn't given. It's claimed. And this time, I wasn't just part of the story. I owned it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been overlooked, replaced, or told you didn't matter, remember this. Your value doesn't disappear just because someone else refuses to see it. You're allowed to take back your story. You're allowed to build something better on your terms. And if you want more stories that remind you of your power, your worth, and your right to start over stronger, subscribe to the channel. We're telling the stories others try to erase. And if even one of them helps you write your next chapter, then this is already worth it.